something?
Not about consciousness.
Yes, okay, that's always a great subject. Now, I mentioned a few things, but I didn't back it up. I said that most of the things you've been taught, most have very little or no meaning. That the English language was not designed for communication. That all religion was designed to control the values and behavior of people to support each successive society. Societies evolve their social customs and their religions supportive to the pre-structured society. And so, if I were an Indian chief, I would bring you up to admire the chief and his family and believe that what the chief has to say is so, and what the witch doctor has to say is also so. And so if I bring up my child as a jumper for Jesus, I bring up that child to follow that pattern. Now, in order for us to build a world in which we can live in a world community, we have to break away from conventional notions which separate human beings. We feel, at least I do, that men and women can achieve the same things. They can be great medics, they can be architects, engineers, but the female doesn't have any inferior structure, that she's capable of tackling anything so long as you don't bring her up as a female, so long as you don't hang a dress on a little girl without pockets, so long as you don't let that little girl climb trees and explore, she's going to be narrower than a male. A male is given a wider range of exploratory behavior. You agree with that, or you're not sure? As a boy, you're given a wider range of behavior, and you're committed a wider range of behavior. And it's all set by the male, those patterns. If you read your Bible, you'll find that the female is supposed to be obedient to the male. Well, this makes it convenient for the male. It was written by a male. And God is a male, not a female, or a thing. And so when you look at God, you find a crude structure designed by man, making God in his image, as ignorant and simple as his values. In order for us to progress out of those patterns, we have to re-examine all of our values, not some of them. In order to do that, we have to have information. Now, what is information? Well, when I say there's lightning and thunder because God is angry, there's no backup information for that. There's no proof. When we say that God dwells in the heavens above, the minister points upward, or the rabbi, and over here the rabbi points the other way. They didn't know the earth was round. When the Jews are fasting in this part of the world, they're stuffing their gut in this part of the world because of the time difference. There can be no holy days. You see what I mean? But we don't think about those things. And so I read the Bible instead of the comic strips because I find it preposterous. I find that all the ideas in there are completely jumbled and unacceptable and senseless. And senseless in this matter there. Is that threatening your beliefs?
It certainly does.
All right. Well, I'm glad.
You offended me.
All right. Okay, now we'll look at that point of view and try to understand it. We have been brought up to believe in purpose, that life has purpose, that nature has purpose, that everything has purpose. And the scientist says, I don't know. I really don't know whether things have purpose. And this is strange. And so they set out to find out. And so they set out to find out. Then, if this bothers you, they set out to find out, and they try things like this. They see a caterpillar.
You know what? You want to know why I'm laughing?
No.
I use the same techniques for certain.
What? Well, the caterpillar is said to have very many legs because it's a caterpillar. Well, there's no reason given for it. They say that a bird has a beak to pick up worms. But if a bird didn't have a beak, if it had an undulating underside with a vacuum, they say that was for picking up worms. And if the bird looked like a worm lure, and the worms crawled on and the lure closed, they say that was for picking up worms. And if the bird, or if the organism just emitted an odor that attracted worms, they say, well, that was for picking up the worms. And so people hang whatever labels they can on things because they don't understand anything. They say that the reason that the earth turns is so you'll have night and day. Well, if the earth didn't turn, you'd have day or night on one side of the world. They say the reason for that was so it would be night on one side and day on the other. And so they say that reason people have a nose is to smell with, and the reason they have a mouth is to eat with, and the reason they have a brain is to think with, and the reason they have ears is to hear with. But most people can't see, hear, smell, or touch because they don't know what they're touching. If you blindfold most people and ran their fingers over a substance Some of them may know that this is vinyl plastic. Others might know that this is styrene by the ring. Some people may know that this is a plastic, methacrylate. They might know, and they might know that this is aluminum by touch, although it's highly improbable. And so they have invented a word in order to talk about what they believe they know. And the word is consciousness, which we deny, that there's no such thing as consciousness, that a human being is not conscious at all. Now, in order to accept that, I'd have to elaborate on that, try to show you what I mean. Okay? When we look at a common object, like a flower, we see something to be sure. But if you had a microphotograph of a section of that flower, enlarged many times, on just about the texture of the surface of the flower, we wouldn't know what we were looking at. When a person says, I'm conscious of a flower, what level? The overall superficial surface? The microscopic detail? The flow of sap up in the midsection and down in the outer section of the plant? The electrical phenomena in plants, electrophoresis, how chemicals work in plants, and induced flow of sap? How the leaves convert the sun's rays into useful energy for the plant? How conscious? So, how much is there to know about a flower? We feel an infinite variety of things. So when a person says, well, at least I'm conscious, I don't know what the hell that is. I don't know what level. Many doctors say this, that the human eye, or the organ of sight, is so complex that they believe that there's 7 million cables behind each eyeball. And each cable having little light sensors like rods and tapered sensors like cones which respond to color. But they themselves are complex, a part of an organ of sight. And so when a person says, I'm conscious, I don't know what they're talking about. What level of conscious? Do you see what I mean? Okay. Now, let's talk about judgments and knowledge, and how scientists talk about knowledge and judgment. Some scientists say that when you put two bricks together, do they touch? Another scientist says, what do you mean by touch? Well, the average person says, oh, well, you know what I mean by touch. Well, the scientist doesn't know what you mean by touch. Because do things have to touch in order to affect other things? Would you mind getting those twin electrodes? Those twin magnets, if you got them? Okay. In order to touch, when we examine bricks, if we put a fluorescent tube behind the two bricks, we will see some light coming through at intervals. Does that make sense to you? So if we took the area of maximum pressure right here and enlarged it, it would look something like this. And we find that it only touched, even in the area of maximum pressure, only certain places. And if you took this area right here of maximum pressure and enlarged it, even that doesn't make full contact, but occasional contact, like that. And even if you enlarge that portion, you will see general light contact areas. So we find that a brick may touch in 1/100th of 1% of the surface. So the average person cannot see the world, they can only see it relative to their own point of view. It seems that Einstein said that when a man sticks his head out of a moving train window and drops a ball, to the man in the train, it appears to be going straight down. As he lets it go, or she, it moves away and straight down. To an observer off the train, it moves at an angle. And the man in the train writes that it's falling straight down. The observer says, oh no, it's moving at an angle. And Einstein said they're both right. To the man in the train, it's moving straight down. To the observer, it's moving at an angle. The word truth has no meaning. Truth implies a uniform thing. In other words, in the early days, a man said he looked up at a planet and it was moving this way, and then it slowed up and stopped for a moment, and then it moved the other way, and you don't understand that at all. And as the Earth and the heavenly bodies moved, they could see that it was rotating. But if it's rotating this way, you can see it rotate. But if its orbit is that way and then that way, it's so far away that you can't see it coming forward. All you see is a beam of light moving up and back. You see what I mean? So relative to the Earth observer, it moves up and back. Relative to the top view, it moves around. Relative to another view, it moves elliptically. How does it really move is a nonsensical question. What is your point of view? Does that make sense? Okay, now, I use this analogy many times. You may understand it better. A mosquito, as you know, walks on water. They do the same thing Jesus did. They walk on water because water is relatively viscous to a mosquito. And if a mosquito could write a book, he would write about water, or it would write about water as being very thick, difficult to sink, break, penetrate. And if a dog were to write about war, I say, my God, that is still completely wrong. It's very thin. And so therefore, searching for truth comes from the old world values. And those are the things that get you into trouble, that make you feel insecure and insufficient, because you don't learn very much in schools. You don't learn very much. You don't learn anything in the Bible, whether it be the Old Testament or the New Testament. Because the Old Testament has a lot of fantastic stories with no backup. And so what we do is we repeat. As children, they grab us and they say, Mommy loves you. Mommy, Daddy, see? And we say, Dada, Dada. So we go on with these children, and then we say, who loves you more than anyone? Dada. And so these children don't know what the hell they're talking about. They're mimicking. If you had a parrot, you get the same thing. Now, what happens to people is they are receiving devices. And you make a series of sounds, you will talk like that if you're brought up like that. And if you're brought up in Italy, you will talk like that. And so, if you're brought up in the old Hebrew culture, way back, you will walk like that. And you will have manners. And they're not real, they're imitation. And if you're brought up in the Orient, you will walk a certain way, very short steps, and you will nod a great deal, and people say, you don't have to bow, and they'll say, that's right. Because this is the way they're brought up. And if you're brought up in England, by the upper middle classes, you walk around till you smell the bad odor. And so people are monkeys. They imitate other people, and yet they want to be free. They want to break away. So long as you don't touch my religion, I'm a Mohammedan. Don't change that. And I believe in the family. I believe in marriage. I believe in children. Don't touch that. I believe in individuality. Don't touch that. Individuality is myth number one. That's a myth and fraud perpetrated by this society. We say that if a human being is exposed to many different cultures, if you had studied art in Italy, assuming you're a fine artist, oil painting, watercolors, or pencils, or all three. Good. If you studied art in Italy, and if you studied art in France under particular instruction, a very sophisticated art instructor could look at your work and say you've been influenced by Da Vinci, Michelangelo, assuming how much you've studied. Even if you study music, a well-facilitated musician can listen to music and say this man or woman has been influenced by Bach, Rimsky-Korsakov, and Beethoven. You can always hear the background. If you listen to Hebrew songs, they are very similar. They have a similar. If you listen to Chinese music, they are similar. Not exactly the same. So if you lived in China 5 years, and France 3 years, and England 2 years, and Israel 5 years, and you came back and wrote music, they say, my, you're an individual. It just means that you've had exposure that the average person hasn't had, a wide range. Does that make sense to you? So to us, there are no gifted people, there are no talented people, there are no bums, and there are no heroes, and no great men, and no poor men, and no murderers. There are just people. Now, if you made it possible that I can have your child, that's very young, I can give that child a cat when it's very young and say, now burn it with a torch. Early. And the more cats it burns, I give it ice cream. And if that child go on burning cats, and John says, my God, that child's a murderer, criminal, deranged. I say, no. If you're brought up by the Nazis as a baby, you say, Daddy, how come we have so much misery in the world? You say, to choose. Everything, to choose. And by the time you see a Jew, you throw mud. You understand what I mean? And these people are brought up like people are brought up to hate Negroes, Swedes, I was once at a large Jewish convention, and one of them says, let's get a Schwarzer to clean out the cellar. Them as a Negro. And I said, no, let's get an old Jew. They're doing the same thing. You see, you do it over and over again. And so bigotry is present in the Klan, and the Jews, and the Catholics, and the Americans, and the Baptists. It's all over. In order to make a break, you got to break from those cultures. You got to come into the human system, the human community, in which there's no Polish cancer, Swedish cancer, Jewish cancer, Irish cancer. There's just cancer. There's only learning and education and physical science. And as soon as we get away from the superstitions and the artificial barriers manufactured by institutions, we can build a brotherhood of man. And this is what's needed. But if we all cling to our pet prejudices and beliefs, then we're going to go on in a world of confusion, suffering, and misery. The brotherhood of man can only be accomplished through knowledge. And so I want to get on with the idea which I talked about in terms of individuality.